The wiggling. Wiggling shows you the depth on a flat screen. This frozen lake ice fishing hole is actually a mat. Wild bonsai tree on a cliff is actually
Yeah.
moss on a poplar tree. But can you stop the wiggling? No.
What's up, YouTube? Today, we'll be looking at disturbing TikToks that'll make you question reality. So without further ado, welcome to Adam Strain Reacts. Let's get her done.
Check this out. McDonald's says, "Hey, DQ, you want to have a sign war?" And then DQ's like, "We would, but we're too busy making ice cream." And then McDonald's replies back, "That's cute. Our ice cream makes itself." And then DQ comes back with, "You mean it actually works? Shocker." McDonald's got to come back again with, "What's a milkman in pantyhose? A Dairy Queen." Ah. And then DQ comes back with, "Why dine with a clown when you can with a queen?" Yeah, that's good. Now, Arvis Bank across the street got to go, "Ice cream machine broken? We have a loan for that." Sounds like a Google ad. And then Sonic, they got to kick in too. And they're like, "We have ice for these burns." And then here comes Domino's with, "Your signs are cheesy, just like our pizza."
Okay, this is kind of blowing my mind. This is an experiment that you can either do with yourself or with somebody else. It's very simple. Either ask the person or yourself to sing at the highest pitch you possibly can. Just go like, ah, but do it as high as you think you physically can. Then either ask them or yourself to imitate the highest pitched singer in the world, and that the person will always come in higher than they just did when they thought they were singing it at the highest possible pitch. And this is a technique that apparently works for a lot of things other than singing, but immediately the responses are people saying, "Oh yeah, this totally works." For example, one person said that when they were in choir, the teacher asked them to sing it like you were an opera singer, and that immediately the sound was bigger and better. I bring this up because I once heard somebody tell me that when they're struggling to solve a problem, one thing they do is try to imagine a smarter person and picture what that person would do, and that it usually helps them. That there are invisible barriers to doing certain things, and that you can make those go away by telling yourself that you are imitating someone else. Even if you're asking yourself in some interpersonal situation, what would the world's nicest person do? Or what would the world's most charismatic person do? Although my favorite response is this person saying, when asked how they learned to dance so well, they said they looked at their shadow and moved it like a puppet.
When you begin,
It's pretty interesting, the idea that if you put yourself in the shoes of someone else, you would perform better than if you believe you're yourself. It sort of brings back to that whole idea of confidence and of manifestation and of believing it first, being able to visualize it and then being able to do it, because you're able to visualize the person that in your mind is the best at that action, because obviously it's a reference. So you've seen that person. So you have a mental cue of how it would look, how it would sound, and then all of a sudden you're able to surpass your own limitations. It's very interesting. I wonder what type of other applications this could work on. If you guys have any ideas on what applications it could work on, write it down below. I'm very curious, and let's keep on rocking.
to study history, you begin to realize during the feudal age, when the peasants kind of worked on the land of the feudal kings, they only worked 140 days out of the year. The other 200 days they chilled. So today we work more than the peasants. Most people work more than the peasants used to and have less to show for it. They have no land, they have no house, they have nothing. It's the illusion of slavery. It's the illusion of freedom.
We got the Chrysler building. Look at this thing. 2 years to build. 2 years. Come on, 1929, 1928. And in a surprise move, they hoisted that up at the last second to win world's tallest building. Just a little surprise by the architects. Well, listen, help me out here. Besides being Callus's Man of the Year, Grandpa Bill, the source of the stone, which I always say takes these buildings out. Hey, Grandpa Bill, what do you know about African marble? I don't know, they just imported it for the Chrysler building. Really? Donde está Mexico? Grandpa Jeb. What does that mean? I don't speak Spanish. Well, that's where they got the onyx from for the lobby, from Mexico. Georgia? Oh, what do you mean, Georgia? Well, that's where we got the granite from, 1929. Then they snuck the spire on to become world's biggest building. Do you believe these stories? Do you believe this BS? Sound off in the comments if you're smarter than me. Come on, come on. Make it make sense, Grandpa Bill. This is the front. Of course they gotta share the building with them. Always got that indention. Oh, you should've went to architect school, Junior. You would've found out what the indention means. I had the best architect teacher in the world. What did they tell you about these things? Why would they do that? Look how dangerous that is. Come on, man. Make it make sense, Chrysler building. Sound off. Am I wrong? 2 years, under 2 years to be built. Make it make sense, Chrysler building. For all the people that ask, why do I care they lie? This is one of the first liars. J.P. Morgan. Look at this building they built. Billions of dollars. Why do you care about them lying? Because look what they're doing. You don't lie and don't get billion-dollar buildings like this. Come on, J.P. Morgan, make it make sense.
Very interesting because, like you said, the timeline of 2 years is kind of crazy. But the aspect that I'd like to highlight in this one is that, like, my family has a industrial supplier company, and basically, sometimes when you order stuff for a project, it gets delayed, or even the basic, the basic wait time normally is from 8 to 16 weeks, depending on where it's from. And now we're talking about 1929. They're talking about granite from here, onyx from here, stones from here. I mean, just the logistics of the ordering, the receiving, and the shipping of all these items just to coordinate with the building. I mean, nowadays would probably take more than 2 years just assembling all of the items that you need. It's an example, but that's without the building, that's without the conception, that's without any problem that you might face during the construction, that's without the fact that there's winter in New York. So 2 years for one of the most iconic buildings ever. Not too sure. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if it's that one or the Empire State that a plane already went into it and was burning for 24 hours and the building is still standing. So it's just a testament to how structurally sound they were, how rigid and strong they were, and built so quickly with all these items from everywhere. I don't know. The idea doesn't quite make sense. It's sort of like the next video we're about to see is basically just a retelling of the official narrative of a situation, and just the official narrative, once you account for all the items that they're bringing up, I mean, it's hard to give it any credence, to be honest. So anyways, let me know if you guys think any different as for the Chrysler building in New York, if you think that 2 years makes sense with all those sources of items coming from all different places without talking about organizing the labor, getting everything done with winter. Let me know down below, and let's keep on rocking. This next piece, not to trigger anyone, it's really just information, and it's one of the most interesting forms of knowledge that I've ever seen, because like I said, it's just a retelling of the official account and it feels like it means something else. Here we go.
On the morning of 19 men armed with box cutters directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes. The pundits knew within hours. The administration knew within the day.
Who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her, and her, and her, and him. Lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about
his head could be seen to move violently forward.
And
they took the babies out of the incubators.
And
mobile production facilities.
And
the rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI. Because ignorance is strength.
I'm not going to jump into it because I know it's not an easy topic, but the only thing I'm going to say is that every second of that video has a little link of information, a name, an item, a situation, something that was brought up, And any one of those things is a rabbit hole. It's a very interesting situation. I have no conclusion. I have no opinion. I'm just showing both sides. That's the way I like to operate. So let's keep on rocking.
This is a Roman salute. Now, it's clearly the end salute. Wrong. This is an Asperger's syndrome gesture. This trick is called narrative contingency framing. It's a scientific method used by mass media to manipulate you into believing anything as truth. Open your fridge. You didn't freely choose these foods. Someone framed them as superfoods or low carb or raw paleo. So you bought a narrative, not the food. The same goes for your wardrobe. You bought certain clothes because media framed them as old money or quiet luxury or clean girl aesthetic. Look at this sharp ironic crease in my pants. The media framed it as a symbol of old money because that's how rich people's tailors iron their pants. So I bought them believing they would make me look more classy and elegant. This guy is clearly a murderer, but some extremists frame him as the rebel against the system. And if you scroll through certain corners of TikTok, you'll find women framing him as bad boy thirst trap. Even this video might be my attempt to frame myself as a smart guy worth following. But in the end, the ultimate decision of what the frame is should be yours. Because as Elon Musk said, you are the media now.
Amazing. I really like that message because at the end of the day, I feel like everything has to do with perception and perspective. So you have a prism of perception through which you analyze things. You could call it glasses. So when you stub your toe in the morning and you say, "Oh, this is going to be a horrible day and this and that," well, then you will find things that support that thought. And if you wake up and you stub your toe and you say, "Well, the worst of the day has passed and only better things can happen from now on," well, you're going to notice the better things. It's an example, but it's just perspective changes the whole outlook. So I find it interesting to try to start holding accountable the people sharing us information by knowing what a frame is and by seeing the framing that's given to us. One of my easy ways to detect this is when something, let's say political or whatever, seems to give you an emotional response, suspend your emotion and question why that's happening and who would have incentives to create this emotional response and what is the conclusion of your emotional response. So you doubt yourself, you doubt your own mechanisms, and you also doubt the information coming in and their mechanisms, and you identify the psychological manipulation that has been used. And once we start understanding those, then we could start reprogramming our brain and seeing what's coming in as a signal and decide if we get affected or not, rather than always be in reaction. So I don't know if any of that made any sense to you guys. Let me know down below, and let's keep on rocking.
This is not meat jerky. This is not ice. This is not lasagna. But what is it then? This is the raised printing with a ripped off piece on the 50 € bill. But why the wiggling? Wiggling shows you the depth on a flat screen. How cool is that? Only the camera moves during the photo shoot and the subject stays still. This creates a depth effect known as wiggle stereoscopy. This frozen lake ice fishing hole is actually a mask. This wild bonsai tree on a cliff is actually a moss on a poplar tree. You will never guess this one, I promise. But can you stop the wiggling? No, this is MacroLab 3D after all, not MacroLab 2D. But seriously, watch this with no wiggling. MacroLab 3D is the only place to watch microscopic worlds with depth. No AI, no CGI, all real macro photography. Here is another example of raised printing on a Ukrainian 500 banknote. It is really this high, so you can feel it with your finger. No exaggerations. Maybe slow it down a little? No, slow wiggling lessens the effect strength. See the difference? Wiggling is not for everyone, I agree. However, this is the most accessible stereo format, which you can watch on any display, even with one eye. And by the way, what if I tell you that you can watch it in real 3D without the wiggling? If you have a compatible device, then navigate to the playlist section and choose your favorite side-by-side format. My favorite way to watch is using a VR headset in VR cinema. Would you try it?
Wow, that is like mind-blowing. I feel like I just did DMT. How crazy is it to see the micro world, the nano world that's right there in front of you? It's so beautiful. Like this world is like fractals. Things have, a bigger view and a smaller view, and it's so interesting to be there with the smaller view. And this technology of the wiggling, it's actually very interesting because it's true that it does give you the sensation of understanding how the spatial disposition of it is. It's like you understand more what you're looking at in 3D. Really love this technology, and I really like seeing things that we're used to seeing from close and having a complete different perspective on the same item. It completely changes your point of view. If you believe that doctors or scientists or whoever are always on your side, let's say, right? And they give you a recommendation and they tell you drink 6 glasses of milk a day, right? Well, automatically you take it with credibility and you do it because you believe in this whole system, you know? But at the end of the day, what if it's not good and it was for monetary purposes? So it's important for us to be able, this is the best example that I have when it comes to this. Like, if you go to the mechanic and you tell him, fix my car, and you have no idea how it works, yeah, he might overdo it, he might overcharge it. But if you go in and you know how your car works and he tells you, oh, I'm going to do this and do that, and you're like, no, that doesn't make sense because this and because that, he's not going to have that legway. So us being conscious of how things work allow us to manipulate the outcomes and not be taken advantage of when we're delegating towards that system. I don't know if that makes sense. Let's keep on rocking.
If you want to go down a bizarre and frankly gruesome rabbit hole, buckle up. This begins with a news story I saw decades ago about a tug-of-war event, one that went very, very wrong. So wrong that 2 men had their arms ripped off. Now, I was actually in college studying journalism when I saw this news story, and I dismissed it as fake because it has all the hallmarks of a fake story. See, lots of these outrageous fake news stories are set on the other side of the world, in this case in Taipei. And they're always very over-the-top and almost cartoonish in how horrific they are. But this is true. And the details are so much crazier than what that headline even implies. You can go look it up on Snopes, but they have photos of the incident, so be prepared. I mean, they have severed limbs on the ground. It happened in 1997. They had a festival where they did a huge tug-of-war, where there's a rope and 2 teams are pulling against each other. Only 1,600 people participated, presumably about 800 on each side. Now, when you're picturing how such a thing could have happened, you're probably imagining that they looped the rope around their arms or their wrists somehow, and then the force of the pulling pulled their arms off. That is not what happened. The truth is actually weirder. This is what happened. Snapback. When a ship is tied up to the dock, you do not stand behind where the rope is attached. That is called the snapback zone. Because if that rope breaks, it will come whipping back at you hard enough to take your life. And lots of people do lose their lives or limbs this way. So in this tug-of-war contest, they were using rope like this, a 2-inch wide nylon rope. It is estimated that the tug-of-war put about 150,000 pounds of force on the rope, 3 times more than what it could withstand. Within seconds, the rope snapped, and the snapback caused it to whip back and sever 2 men's left arms. As in, their arms were lying on the ground. You can go look at it if you want. They were able to reattach them. But the rabbit hole you can go down is all of the history of incredibly gruesome tug-of-war events gone wrong, because that was not an isolated incident. Children have had their fingers severed this way. There is an entire article about the history of tug-of-war fatalities. And it's such a perfect example of something that looks totally innocuous and fun. And you don't realize how much power is stored up in something until the moment it's finally released.
Being stolen from Louvre is what made the Mona Lisa famous. Nobody knew about the Mona Lisa in 1911. Look, here she was, one of the hundreds of random paintings in Louvre. Then one guy randomly grabbed the Mona Lisa and disappeared in 1911. She was so unimportant that it took 2 days for the Louvre staff to realize she was missing. So who made her important? The media, newspapers at the time, invented clickbait headlines to sell more copies. Finest portrait in the world stolen. The world's greatest portrait. And this face was on front pages for 2 years straight. When they finally found her, suddenly everyone wanted to see the finest portrait in the world. In reality, this is just a basic Renaissance selfie. A rich merchant asked Leonardo to paint his wife, and he did it as a quick side hustle to grab some cash. In his notebooks, Leonardo never mentioned Mona Lisa, not even once. And now, people claim her eyes magically follow you around the room. There's a hidden golden ratio in her smile, and other artistic voodoo magic stuff. This is called the mere exposure effect. People think something is valuable just because it's been in the media long enough. Nobody cared about this necklace or tiara a week ago. But now, I bet H&M and Zara will launch collections based on it. So this proves that you don't become famous by being beautiful. You become beautiful by being famous.
Again, perspective. Isn't it interesting how for us, since we're born, that painting is the most impressive painting in the world just because it's always been. But at the end of the day, things have an origin story. So it's so interesting to see how these things come about. I wonder why it was manipulated that way. Was it to sell more tickets for the Louvre? Did they steal it themselves? I mean, what's the idea behind it? It's very interesting. I just find that, like he was saying earlier, the framing of a story changes everything. And now this one, the exposure. So now understand why you always see the same ads and the same companies and the same thing over and over and over again. Truth is simple. It works. So the more you're exposed to something, the more it becomes a part of your psyche. I mean, we like to think that we're really complicated, but at the end of the day, it feels like these companies, they got us figured out. You know? So maybe we should stop thinking that we're so special and start taking back control of our mechanisms and identify the information coming in and catch it when it's coming in and not just be living in a reactive state. So I don't know if you guys understand the parallel that I'm trying to make, but did you guys know that this is how the Mona Lisa got infamous? I had zero idea. Let me know down below. Let's keep on rocking.
With our crash out of the day, we have man versus robot. I mean, first off, what crime did you commit for the cops to be like, you know what, let's send the robot on them? Is it that bad or are you that dumb? They're like, you know what, let's try some new shit. And I think it's because you that dumb, because you decide you gonna pull out a gun. My boy pull out the strap, and I think he tries to shoot the brain of the robot. I mean, son. And he climbs out the window after the robot shoots some tear gas. And then, watch this. He don't make no run for it. He grabbed the cover, and then the robot's like, hold on, excuse me, Sugar Bob Honey Bunch, you're stuck. Gotcha. I can't even lie, though. I feel you with the cover move. I probably would try to do the same thing. Like, all right, there goes his eyes. But that was just a terrible toss. And then, this got to be terrible to be the first dude ever that got caught by a robot. Like, you get into prison or jail, and what happened? How I go down, bro? You was on the run? No, a robot ran over me. What? And in fact, you tried to shoot the robot. Real dickhead activity. I mean, this is egregious work. Felonious decision. And now look at you. On the ground and about to get run over by a robot. Crash out of the day or dickhead of the day, doesn't matter. It's this guy.
And that's a wrap for today, familia. Whether you're tuning in with the sunrise or you're posted up after midnight, I appreciate your time, your energy, your curiosity. And don't forget, this isn't about truth or fiction. This is about perspective. If this sparked a laugh, a thought, a deeper question, then we did our job. So drop your thoughts in the comments, keep the convo alive, like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell if you're riding the wave, because we're just getting started. So until next time, stay grounded, stay weird, stay critical. I'm Adam Strain, and this has been Adam Strain Reacts. Peace. Now it's time for us to link up. Really think we on the brink of making a change from living this strange.